Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Scientific Governance and Risk Meeting number 173, taking place on January the 6th, 2022. Now, our first meeting of the new year. I hope everyone enjoyed their time off. Well, hopefully everyone managed to take some. And yeah, hopefully everyone's excited and back and ready to get back into Maker. I'll do the usual preamble. Yeah, we like to hear from people in this meeting, so feel free to comment or ask questions. Obviously, we are recording, so do try not to talk over each other too much as well. Yeah, just generally, as always, be polite and respectful of other participants. So, all right, contents this week. We have our governance roundup, and we have a couple of presentations. I believe we're going to look back at 2021 and then take a brief look ahead at 2022. We also have a presentation from Deco, and talking about a little bit on what they've been doing as a core unit, and I believe talking about DSSGate, which I think is one of the important smart contracts with relation to the fixed rate stuff they're working on. So yeah, let's move on. Cool. So general updates on votes. This isn't going to be super long. No polls, obviously, took place this week because of the holiday. We're going to have a set starting on Monday. This is going to include 5 green light polls for OGN, USD, BLD, TUSD, and USDAP. I know what some of those are, but I'm sure you can find out what they are on the forum if you are interested. We have a couple of MIPS stratification polls as well. Pablo will go over those in just a moment. And then I think 2 signal request polls for prioritizing the compound D3M and raising the emergency shutdown threshold. So look out for all those on Monday. So also no executive proposal this week. I think we only had one item in, which was delegate comp. So given that everyone's kind of blowing off the cobwebs a little bit, I think we're going to push that and in combination because there's not much to really do this week. So we'll have the first one of those next week on next Friday. All right, that brings us to MIPS updates. So Pablo, do you want to take it away?
Yep, sure. Hello, everyone. Long time no see. Pablo here with a MIPS update. So the formal submission window for January's governance cycle closed on Wednesday 5, and we've had 12 formal submissions. So let's do a quick review of them. We've had 3 MIPs supposed to sub-proposals, formally submitted. We've had MIP 62, Collateral Reporting Process by GFX Labs, one of our recognized delegates, MIP 63, Maker Keeper Network by Hexanaut from Protocol Engineering, and MIP 64, the Bug Bounty Program for MakerDAO Critical Infrastructure by Travin, who is Mint Facility's current facilitator. Moving forward, we've had a couple of core unit budget additions or extensions, one for Oracle Gas Costs by Oracle's Nick Kunkel, a budget for StarkNet Engineering to start their phase 2, which is a fast withdrawal and wormhole, and some budget adjustments for DUCs and for SES. And we have 2 new core units being proposed. One of them is Strategic Finance, whose mission is to provide financial reporting and analysis for the DAO with Mark Phillips, also known as ICE. I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, as its facilitator. We also have TechOps, whose mission is to provide technical support service to DAO with Dimitrios Sabrocci and Simon Kelala-Topalunov as facilitators. We also have Deimos' proposals for the removal of content protections facilitators at GoldHub and this coordinates budget. And we have Run's proposal to onboard Remo as real-world finance facilitator. Run had also posted a proposal to onboard the current facilitator for the unit, Sebastian Derego. However, Seb has publicly declared that he will be stepping down from the role voluntarily on January 25th. So this proposal has been marked as withdrawn. So these proposals we've just reviewed, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. We'll have the ratification post going live on Monday 10. If you're thinking of having a yet unposted proposal entering for the governance cycle, you still have 6 days until January 12th. And yeah, before I close, I'll mention that there's a number of proposals still in RFC, MIP 60, MIP 61, the Maker Talent Core Unit proposal set, etc. So please go give them a read in case you haven't yet, and leave some feedback. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate that. I believe we're now going to Artem to talk about updates on the forum.
Yep. Hey, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Welcome to the forum at a glance. This time actually covering for the last couple of weeks because of the holiday. So covering December 16th to January 6th on the forums. And we'll begin with the announcements. So first up, Matthew Rabinowitz published a comprehensive four-part update on the future and roadmap of success and the community. They utilized the crawl, walk, and run approach and announced that it's time to transition to walking. In order to help develop appropriate objectives for 2022, the post begins looking forward into the far future of what DAO and DeFi construct may look like, where we are headed as a community from both 6S's and MakerDAO's perspective. As then we reel back into the present for 2022, Matthew Rabinowitz further defines the agenda for 6S's roadmap, which covers their intentions, their strategy, objectives for growth and scaling, their mission clarity, and quantifiable portfolio targets. Success also has strong intentions to implement the case for clean money into their growth plan. And there's all parts of the posts in the forum at a glance. Next up, Ace coming in as usual, providing us the Maker's revenue and cash flow forecast, this time for the year of 2021, which includes all existing and prospective core units along with their budgets and expenses. We forecasted to finish the year at nearly 13 times 2020's fiscal year revenue, and the rolling 12-month forecast is even more favorable due to an increase in ETH and WBTC stability fee rates. Check out the post for additional access to a detailed breakdown of actual expenses and the budget simulator itself. And next up, GovAlpha publishes December's delegate compensation for our 9 recognized delegates. The total payout for December is 48,290 DAI compared to November's payout of 35,834 DAI. This leads to an annualized projection of about 500,000 DAI, which does require more months of data to confirm. And moving on to our discussions, there's only 2 discussions that I put up for this post. First up, Andrew Hall, a political economy professor at Stanford who studies governance and solutions, shares his team's research-driven insights for Maker governance. The discussion presents 3 central DAO governance challenges: aligning incentives with stakeholders, increasing MKR participation, improving the delivery of information and expertise. And he finishes off with potential next steps and what we can do. Andrew Hall is seeking community feedback to help improve and initiate this project. Next up, El Progreso continues to help rock the DeFi chasm by publishing 3 more parts to the topic. He talks about complacency risks and conquering L2s through mergers and acquisitions. Rocking the DeFi chasm number 3 asks whether DeFi KPI goals are possible and what can we do if DAO airdropped Maker Breaker for further decentralization. It includes the origins of Breaker and its memenomics, tying in how Maker can utilize this psychology through MKR airdrops from the treasury. As the 3rd post ends off with KPI goals for DeFi, his 4th post focuses on Maker's competitive moat, DAI network effects, and whether it has achieved desired growth and virality through DAI as our core product. Moving on to our active signal requests. We have The Maple protocol, in consultation with Growth Core Unit and Real World Finance, signaling to onboard a D3M for the creation of a Maple DAI pool. Lucas asks the community whether Maker should onboard a Maple Finance D3M. His post provides an overview of the proposal's pros, cons, and risk mitigation. Next up, as lost funds continue to become a recurring issue for DAI users, Lost Some DAI presents a case where a user accidentally called the burn function on DAI Sol on Optimism, burning 10 million DAI. He asks the community whether an executive vote should manually pull the burnt 10 million DAI from the Optimism escrow via an executive vote. And next up, MakerDAO has had several conversations about how to develop an effective framework for soliciting, disseminating, and acting on legal advice. Seth from Content Production proposes to sponsor a bounty of 40,000 DAI to be paid to whoever submits a MIP that successfully passes through governance and meets the requirement. About what we need for a legal framework, he also presents a set of requirements for claiming the said bounty and asks the community whether MakerDAO should sponsor a $40,000 bounty for a framework to solicit and disseminate and act on legal advice. And that's it. Check out the written version of the forum at a glance for the 3-point summary, evaluations, reports, ongoing initiatives, help wanted, and also all the links to all the posts I mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Artem. Yeah, and that does bring us to our presentation segment. David, I believe you're doing the first presentation.
Yes, I am up first.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
All right. So before I really get us kicked off, I wanted to just highlight the importance of looking back and recognizing just where the protocol started in 2021, where it ended in 2021, and just the massive amount of stuff that happened. I think between, like Artem said, or Artem mentioned ACES post, we increased our revenues by 20-fold since 2020, but really we progressed so much more than that. And this is an attempt to capture most of it. I think something that I actually missed in the recap is kind of all the core units that we've onboarded. So before I start on the first official slide after this one, yeah, we've onboarded 18 different core units this year. Which is absolutely Herculean. So yeah, let's get started. So Q1 2021 was pivotal. We had news of the Maker Foundation dissolving. Likewise, as an ex-foundation member myself, internally, many of the people from the foundation kind of broke off, and some left, some started their own CUs, others, became contributors. And so it was an extremely pivotal moment because, for the life of Maker, we've had the foundation bootstrapping us. And, the real goal was to step back once the protocol was self-sufficient. And I think that's what we achieved in 2021. As a result, the Maker Foundation dissolved actually ahead of schedule, which is incredible. We've also had the core unit operating model posted, and then shortly after, the very first core units were onboarded, with I believe Real World Finance being the first, but among the very first were GovAlpha and some others I'm forgetting. We also had, with the dissolution of the foundation, the sunset of the development grants program. And in its place this year, we've seen a number of different tools for doing grants through Maker, not through the foundation. So we've seen the Special Purpose Fund MIP come about. We've seen SES, the core unit that does incubations and various grants, come about. We've also seen various core units doing their own micro grants and granting programs. So thankfully, Maker is still really healthy on the grant side. Starting in Q2, we saw our first major technical upgrade with the release of Liquidations 2.0. And by the way, this is not complete because there were a lot of smaller kind of technical upgrades and things that happened. So yeah, so release of Liquidations 2.0 is kind of like a really big one. really big milestone for Q2. Then, as also continuing in their dissolution process, the Maker Foundation returned a huge portion of the dev fund holdings to the DAO, leaving themselves just a bit for operating expenses and whatever else. And so that was also a really cool pivotal moment to see that good faith from the foundation, and really kind of seeding Maker with what it currently has in its treasury, around 84,000 MKR. We've also seen improvements to our governance processes in 2021. In Q2, we had a new monthly governance cycle formalized in the form of MIP 51. This greatly sort of simplified things and made governance overhead a little bit more user-friendly for members of the DAO and voters, thankfully. We also had another large product launching in the form of the Flash Mint module implementation, which unfortunately doesn't get used too much, but it was really cool that it came out. Then in Q3 we had another awesome product innovation, Aave direct deposit module, the D3M, which the D3M is not exclusive to Aave, as you have heard. We're considering other ways to implement the D3M mechanism to really spread DAI's prevalence in DeFi. We also had the very first real-world assets onboarding through the Tinlake centrifuge and also the Success Vault facilities. And of course, it's a crawl, walk, run for everybody. So it's been nice to see that we're making progress. And yeah. We've also seen governance launch vote delegation in response to kind of concerns about passing executive votes and not having a dedicated voting and discussion team around various issues and topics. And so this has greatly improved our throughput in governance. We have seen since the launch of this program an incredible increase in efficiency for passing executive votes, for discussing topics, for bringing up issues, etc. So I think the spawning of this class of DAO members has been very, very pivotal for 2021 as well. Additionally, in Q3, we launched our first official DAI token bridge for an L2 for the Arbitrum L2 chain. So that was really exciting. And then moving into Q4, as a result of like a lot of governance action and concern of the over concentration of USDC-backed DAI, governance took a number of steps to try to reduce that, including onboarding new PSMs, factoring in the open market, the group that sets rates or proposes rates rather. Did so through monetary policy, trying to make generating DAI from non-stables a bit more attractive, etc. And as a result, Maker Open Market Committee. Thank you, Long. And as a result, USD's collateralization fell below 26% from its high of, I think, 55%. So that was a really great success story for diversifying that backing collateral. But of course, it is back up to 45%, thanks to this looming market crash. Also in Q4, we had the 2-year anniversary of the launch of multi-collateral DAI. I remember that like it was yesterday. I can't believe it's been 2 years. I feel like waiting for multi-collateral DAI was like a 10-year wait that was packaged into 3 years. But nevertheless, we're 2 years in and we're still going and we're strong and we're growing. So it's exciting. Another pivotal thing we saw in Q4 is an infusion of vision by one of the co-founders of MakerDAO originally, Rune Christensen. He published The Case for Clean Money, advocating for a whole different class of collateral that should be prioritized, mainly ESG collateral that is positive for environmental impact around the world. It's also a subset of real world assets. And likewise, part of his vision included a redesign of MKR tokenomics. And really, he proposed many interesting ideas that I believe many of us are still chewing on and thinking on, and eventually, hopefully, will implement in an ideal sort of way. And I believe Rune is actually gearing up to post a refined version of this vision sometime this year. Also, in Q4, so this is actually really interesting. So Monkey Irish, who is the facilitator of the Collateral Engineering Services Core Unit, who is an ex-Foundation employee, presented Beyond the Maker Foundation, the past, present, and future at ETH Portland. And the reason I put this on here is because I feel like his talk really resonates with a lot of the people who went from being at the foundation, you know, centralized sort of company, bootstrapping maker, to being a independently funded core unit amongst many at a DAO. And so this transition from like centralized company to decentralized organization is a really, really, really interesting story. And it resonates with me, and I think it resonates with many other core unit facilitators. And so we are really on the bleeding edge here. So a huge pat on the back for people that are engaging and really making a career out of their involvement here at Maker. We also had a huge amount of DAI growth. In Q4 of 2021, total DAI surpassed 9 billion, which I think 2 years ago was like everybody was talking about it. But at the heart of everybody, they're like, oh, I wonder if we'll actually achieve this parabolic growth. And yet here we are, just a stone's throw away from 10, and then hopefully 100, and then hopefully into the trillions. But we will see. Also in Q4, we encountered the very first collateral offboardings. So, you know, business is business and overhead is overhead, and layer 1 gas is expensive and has gotten more expensive over the course of 2021. And as a result, numerous people, I guess even really led by Oracle's being the primary cost, we started doing our very first collateral offboardings. And this is important because it's you know, it's a business function. And it's important for the maintenance of the protocol, and it's important as a process to kind of solidify and nail down. And so it was an interesting thing, a new thing that we did at the end of last year. I think this number is might be underrepresented. I think it's because a few of them were onboarded in late 2020, but my timeline brain is not perfect right now. So at least 15 core units onboarded within the year of 2021, with actually a total of, I believe, 18 or 19 right now. I'll get the exact numbers for the next call if you guys are interested. Q4 2021, we also had yet another amazing product innovation, the Maker Wormhole official release. And this was a breakthrough design to get around layer 2, like bridge deposit delays and all of that, and really kind of spawned this new way of thinking about how we can get DAI minted and transferred to other layer 2s in an efficient manner. We also had a unified auctions UI release, a brand new auction UI for just regular non-technical folks, which is really great. And yeah, amongst other things. So if I did miss anything like major, please DM me. We did try to cover most of everything. All right, so let's move on to the next part of the segment. So here's some interesting governance metrics that we pulled. And if you're interested in where we pulled them from, you could actually go into the presentation, which is linked in the forum agenda for this call. And you could just go to this slide and click on those links below. They're really great. The voting portal itself is really great. And also the beta.mcdgov.info site by token flow guys is really great. So that's been an indispensable tool for this portion of my slideshow. So total executive proposals in 2021, 48. All of them passed with the exception of the July 16th executive, which expired with an inconclusive vote. We had 307 governance polls. I'm not going to go through all of the different types of governance polls, but as you can see, some of the major ones, we had 122 different ones related to collateral. We had 74 different ones related to MIPs, 24 related to governance, 18 related to risk parameters, i.e. variables, and many others. Another interesting thing is the first poll of 2021 passed with around 67,000-ish maker with 25 unique voters, and the very final one passed with around 80,000 MKR, but about half as many, or a little bit more than half as many unique voters, 17. And this is, I believe, a result of not only increased gas costs, which deterred a lot of the smaller voters from voting in every single vote, but also this was affected by the introduction of the delegates, right? So we have a way more consistent cohort of people, albeit a smaller cohort, voting. And so a lot of these smaller voters who might have been voting themselves have delegated and have entrusted various recognized delegates to vote on their behalf. And nevertheless, we are seeing a pretty steady but healthy amount of MKR voting in the governance contract. But of course, our goal, one of our goals for this year is to increase that. As for delegation metrics, we have had 9 recognized delegates introduced in 2021 with almost 80,000 MKR delegated, all of whom meet the performance requirements naturally, because if they didn't, they just wouldn't be able to be recognized delegates officially. Then we have 9 shadow delegates with about 21,000 MKR delegated. If one of them wanted to be a recognized delegate, they probably could because they meet the performance requirements. But 3 somewhat meet them and 5 don't meet them at all. So there's obviously, just the differences in people's voting behavior. Some people are extremely consistent. Others might vote on just the things that they're most interested in. All right, so looking ahead for 2022, I wanted to ask the question of what are the focuses for this year? And since 2017, we've really evolved a lot as a protocol, as Maker. And so a part of how we put these slides together is we took all of the various core unit updates and roadmaps, and we kind of parsed them out and organized everything into the various higher level initiatives that are happening at Maker, which GovComms is working pretty hard to map out. And so here we go. The first big ticket item is layer 2s. MakerDAO has 3 different layer 2s that it is focused on: Arbitrum, Optimism, and Starknet. But really, it can get a lot more. We can get a lot wider coverage with layer 2s with Wormhole. So I'm very excited about Wormhole. As for collateral management, we have parallel tracks for collateral management, on-chain and off-chain. And so off-chain referring to real-world assets, of course. They have a whole different set of requirements and complexities that on-chain collateral management doesn't. And so that's why they're separated. But the various things that are of focus are improved stakeholder alignment and coordination around these initiatives, optimizations around collateral management and cross-team work for real-world assets, a revamping of the collateral prioritization framework, improved partnership practices, as well as progressing the real-world asset deals frameworks and processes. For oracles, we have a number of different focuses this year: multi-chain L2 oracles, cross-chain bridges as oracles, gas optimizations, and referring back to Nick's post from last year, oracles as a service, which is a really exciting thing that I can't wait to exist. For technical upgrades, there's a number of different focuses we've identified this year. There is a looming governance contract redesign. Many of you know it as the Sagittarius engine. And of course, the details of which are still being discussed and figured out. It's accompanied by an MKR tokenomics redesign. We also have Deco fixed rate vaults. You're going to hear a presentation from BAMC right after me on that. We have various module enhancements and integrations from the PE team. I highly recommend going and reading their core unit update in the forum. They list out all the specifics there. It was too much to add to this slide deck, so I didn't. We have various technical upgrades for auction keepers, infrastructure, and UI, including Liquidations 2.0 for flap auctions. We also have a number of safety and tooling upgrades in the pipeline, as well as something that the PE team has been teasing us all about internally is NFTs as collateral. There's going to be some interesting proposals coming up around that. Various organizational improvements are also on the horizon. We are a protocol, very technical, but of course we're also an organization. There's people here and there's teams here, and we all work together to try to achieve our milestones and goals. And so some of the different focuses on this front are optimizing and streamlining protocol operations, both from a governance perspective and from a cross-team working relationship perspective. We have a focus on reducing governance overhead where we can. We have a focus on improving core unit oversight. We have an emergency playbook and resources for emergency preparedness in the works. A GDPR compliant stakeholder database is in the works. We have improved financial reporting thanks to ACE in the works. We have initiative mapping in the works. We have stakeholder alignment calls in the works. And we have a general focus on just improved stakeholder communications overall in the works. That's right, Artem. And so for growth, another major initiative at Maker, we have a number of different focuses: improved partner relations, institutional vaults and how to streamline those types of deals, additional PSMs and D3Ms, more grants, improved message propagation, i.e. marketing and just talking about what we're doing, because there's a lot. Continued partnership development, of course, and more core unit incubations, thanks to SES continuing to focus on how we could scale Maker to be what it needs to be. For security, yet another really important initiative at Maker. Thanks to Immunify Security and also the tech ops and the security mindedness of the various technical teams here at Maker, we have operational security and bug bounty MIPs in the works. We have fire drills that will be happening at some point in 2022. We also have bug bounty programs being established, completely funded and operated by Maker. And we have operational security audits planned. And so this is going to help safeguard core units from things like hacks and exploits, and really making sure everybody is mindful about their OPSEC. As for risk, we have various focuses: risk dashboard improvements, including like various new metrics. We have a vault liquidation machine learning model that's in development. We have L2 risk dashboards in the pipeline. We have DeFi systemic leverage metrics planned. And then we also have a focus on risk parameter proposal process improvements, also kind of in line with reducing governance overhead and increasing our efficiency and our speed at which we can react and change things. If you haven't checked out the risk dashboard by our risk core unit here at Maker, I highly recommend you check it out. The link there is in the slide, so feel free to check it out. We also have various number of user interfaces at Maker. with a number of different teams focusing on improving them and developing them. First, we have content productions team working on Community Portal 2.0, also known as MakerDAO.world. Yeah, we have auction UIs being developed by the new SAS team, Sidestream Auction Services. We have various forum improvements, which will continue to be a focus, I think, for the life of Maker. We always want to improve the user experience of the people who interact with us on our public communication venues. And then we have a number of different voting portal, i.e. the governance portal improvements, thanks to the Dux team. Both interactivity improvements and tool integrations, as well as like an approach towards scalable gasless voting mechanisms and things like snapshots. Yeah. And then we have special purpose funds, which there actually aren't any ratified just yet, but there are a number of them in RFC left over from last year. And so one of them is a legal fund, which kind of provides legal funding for protection of DAO members, for funding the legal opinions, and various other legal initiatives, basically. We have a Singaporean jurisdiction study for being able to source real-world asset deals from Singapore. And we also have RealDAO, which focuses on decentralized SPV infrastructure in the works. And I think one thing I might have forgotten about for growth is, yeah, more videos from content production on tutorials, how to interact with us, how to vote, how to basically, how do we educate our would-be stakeholders to come into MakerDAO and really participate. And yeah, I hope I didn't spend too much time. It was only like 40 slides, but yeah, we ran through it pretty quick. So yeah, thanks for listening. And again, I don't think we even covered everything in completion. There were numbers of things, like off the top of my mind, there were a number of different upgrades as a result of bug fixes, thanks to the PE team. For example, like the governance contract upgrade that happened last year. Yeah, there's some other stuff, but yeah, a million other things. So thanks for listening, and I hope that this is a testament to just the incredible amount of work being done by the numerous teams here at Maker, many of which, if we didn't have, we would be that much less fortunate. So thank you all. You've had a great year, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic 2022.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, David. That was certainly is a lot when you add it all up next to each other, next to it, right? All right. Vamsi, do you want to share your screen?
Yep, I'm ready. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
I think host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, I'm the host now. Sure. Oh. How do I move this?
All right, I think that looks good. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Just trying to. Never mind, I can't find my cursor, but let's get started. So, hey everyone, I'm Vamsi from the Deco Fixed Rate Walls Core Unit, here with a quick update on what we've been up to since our proposal got accepted early December, and one update on a module that we've just finished designing and implementing during December that we think could be pretty interesting. both for Deco, like for our users, like later when we launch, as well as like for other integrations that we think like can like integrate with Maker in a fairly interesting way. So first of all, quick updates. Deco, we're getting set up like on the operations side. We are yet to like form a legal entity, but it's like underway. And on the technical side, we've taken all the feedback that we received on our proposal, all the extensive feedback that we received. We did like some redesign. We're almost like done with the redesign of like the integration, like taking into account all that feedback. And we've actually finished like designing and implementing DSSGate, which also like came out of discussions with the SES team and as well as the PE team, like during like November, December last year. On basically, it's about teams like Deco getting involved, like parallel smart contract development, like lowering the amount of work that we would normally add to like teams like PE, unblocking like teams like PE getting work done faster, parallel development, all that good stuff. So DSSGate kind of sounds like ominous a little bit, but gate here like means like an access gate, like you open access or permit like something to happen, like a gate in that sense. And I would say it's like a governance tool to limit like VAT.suck integration risk. You might be asking, Vamsi, like why are you adding like more stuff to like governance? Why are you are forcing like governance to deal with like VAT.suck again? I promise like it'll be interesting. So this is like a small module that we've developed that, like I said, we'll use like for the Deco fixed rate vaults integration. So here, like I'll spend about like 15 minutes quickly going over like what this does. I'll touch upon things like I've been thinking about like while doing this, like while preparing this presentation, right? I've thought about like the protocol control value meme that's been that's like pretty popular these days in DeFi, and this is like kind of my take on like what I think Maker protocol control value is and how we could use that as a channel like to onboard like more integrations. And then how we took the SES project sandbox report that was published in, I think, November, December last year, how we took some of their recommendations, especially like to deal with sensitive functions like VAT.suck, and how we condensed that into this DSSGate design, the design of like gate high level features, and how like governance could use this as a tool to manage what I'm trying to like make a protocol control value like integrations, and then a couple like links to the code base. So at a high level, like, I mean, I think like Maker is essentially a liquidity engine, right? Like you need liquidity, like almost everybody. We've seen this trend in like 2021. Everybody who's faced like problems with liquidity have essentially like approached Maker. You've seen like other DeFi projects do it. You've seen, you know, real world asset teams do it. You've seen like crypto collateral, like a lot of folks like approach Maker for liquidity. So I've been trying to classify it, and then I think like we could classify Maker liquidity into two different buckets. So one is the ilk bucket, and the other is the suck bucket. So as you've seen, like the ilk bucket or the collateral backed liquidity bucket, we've seen a fair amount of experimentation. We've onboarded like crypto collateral, LP tokens, stablecoin PSMs, RID3M, yield term lending module, drop from Tin Lake, Success Capital, just a whole long list of like folks that have been onboarded to access liquidity from Maker, like from the ilk side. I think like there's a second channel like to access like Maker liquidity, and I think that's the route, and that route is like through suck, and so which is like surplus buffer. Like we're sitting at a really healthy like surplus buffer, like 60 odd million, which is probably like poised to grow and hit like 100 million soon, which is like a lot of like value that's locked in Maker surplus buffer. I I think like I've seen others basically like classified the same way as surplus buffer as like maker's protocol, one of like maker's protocol control value, or like one source of liquidity that MakerDAO like fully owns, along with, I'd say, like other assets that are also sitting under the control of like Maker governance. So surplus buffer and suck as a channel to access like Maker liquidity. We've there have been a few. I mean, I was trying to make a list of like, okay, what modules have so far like have access access to suck or have access suck. Like one flap auctions, although not directly, but roughly like access suck, and then try to buy MKR from the market and then like burn it off. We have like DAI savings rate contract that accesses the pod contract that accesses suck and promises a yield to depositors, DAI depositors into pod. We've seen like DSS West being used, like using the surplus buffer like to pay teams, employees, like using a stream. And Deco fixed rate walls, like we'll share the design like a couple of weeks like down the road, but would also like use suck like to make the integration happen. So in a sense, I think there is a little bit of experimentation. Most of it has been like internal so far. Nothing has been like an integration focused experience around suck. Deco, I think, like would be probably one of the first like to access suck like from an integration perspective. That's not like internal to the Maker protocol, slightly like out. So the big pain point to these integrations have always been like, for us, like suck is like scary. Access to suck is like, it's a really scary thing, right? One small mistake, and then you not only lose the surplus buffer, but you can literally suck like, I don't know, 10 billion, 100 billion, 1 trillion DAI. So suck is this, to get access to suck, you need authorization on VAT, and that's like getting direct access to that is like really scary. So last year, like when we put out our proposal, and then we were talking to SES PE, essentially these are like slides actually from the project sandbox report that SES did a presentation last year. So I've just like pulled the 3 slides out of that presentation and put them here. So their ask to us was, see, there's no way like you can get like direct access to suck from MCD VAT because it comes with a whole ton of risks. Why don't you think of like a sandbox in between that limits the amount of risk that Maker is taking on? So essentially, if the sandbox says like sets a total suck limit of 1 million DAI, there is just no way like Deco can access like more than 1 million DAI, Deco or any integration using that sandbox. And so in a sense, if Deco or the integration just gets hacked, and like a call for like, I don't know, 100 million DAI like goes through, the sandbox would block it and would save Maker and the entire like Maker protocol from that risk. So we took that concept and then we tried to basically implement it, and also like look for a couple other like we've made a few other design choices to make it a bit more generalized, not just like to suit the needs of like Deco protocol, but also potential like future Maker PCV integrations. So again, like just to recap again, any integration that needs access to suck, it's like a lot of upfront work has to go into auditing the integration like completely to ensure that it doesn't like impose risks. The primary reason being VAT has almost like a binary approval process. So when VAT gives access to a smart contract, it authorizes that smart contract to call all the restricted functions and an unlimited amount of like and to suck an unlimited amount of like DAI out of VAT. So in a sense, DSSGate acts as an intermediary between like that particular suck call. So here, like you can see DSS gate, like a gate contract like sits between an integration and VAT. VAT would only authorize gate to execute suck. And then gate is this like minimal, it's a small module that only deals with like putting a gate on like the amount of dye that can be sucked out of VAT. So we can call it like something like a draw limit. So gate would in turn approve the integration to execute suck. So from an integration perspective, like it's making the same suck call. It's just like not making it directly into VAT. It's like making it's doing that into DSSGate, which implements the gate. So a gate contract like does two things. One, it implements this draw limit. You can think about a draw limit as like a static number, kind of like a token approval, right? You get an approval up to 5 million, you can spend like up to 5 million. For example, you get an approval up to like 1 million, you can like an integration can suck up to a total of like 1 million. So in that sense, the draw limit acts as like this limiting factor in terms of the amount that can be sucked out. So Gate implements that. Gate actually implements a second thing called a backup balance. So the idea behind backup balance was like is like twofold actually. One, what if the integration is like completely not tested? It's like super early stage where Maker protocol does not want to even authorize the gate contract like up to any amount. It just does not want to set like any sort of authorization or wants to set the draw limit to 0. So Gate can actually work with local dye balance. We're calling it like backup balance, and governance can like do a one-time transfer or like set up a DSS West stream and then load up like Gate contract with like a certain dye amount. Gate is like not even connected to VAT, and the integration can get going. It doesn't have to like wait for any permissions into the core like Maker protocol. So backup balance can be like I don't know, if you want to take a phased risk rollout approach to launching integrations, we could like governance could actually like set up the Gate contract with a backup balance and get the integration going. And over time, all it takes is a single approval on VAT to just like set up that draw limit. Backup balance actually, like the idea behind backup balance was actually twofold. Like I said, one, to get integrations quickly going, but also to give integrations a little bit of a trustless guarantee. So governance can remove like authorization to Gate or the integration at any time, right? Like all it takes is an executive vote and then remove the authorization for Gate, and the integration essentially wouldn't be able to suck. But integrations usually have like a little bit of like long-term obligations to the users. So if their suck call like fail abruptly because governance like decided to remove authorization, it would be like a disaster for them. Or other ways in which this could happen is emergency shutdown. Like abruptly, like there's emergency shutdown, and then all the integrations that rely on like suck are like basically out of luck, like just instantly. So in a sense, a backup balance can act as that resource that integrations can like draw upon, I don't know, to wind down their operations, or like just when like when these like suck calls fail, either like temporarily or like permanently. So in a sense, it's a nice backup that increases the trustworthiness of like the suck call like for an integration. So in combination, like one example would be like, okay, once all this is set up, like the backup balance is just sitting there. It's not like actively used. What's actively used is still the suck call. You could implement like different integrations could implement different style of draw limits. One simple thing that we are going with right now is like this token approval style, where this is the role of governance, right? So now governance basically has a couple things. Analyze the integration and its requirement like to access suck, deploy a Gate contract. This Gate contract is completely controlled by like Maker governance again. It's not controlled by like the integration. And Maker governance like has to take like two decisions. One, set an appropriate draw limit, and two, load it with an appropriate backup balance. And these are like kind of either or. You don't need to do both. You can do like one or the other, and then like change that decision down the road as the integration gets more mature. But those are the two big things. And by setting an approval limit, essentially like integration now has access to suck up to that amount. And this isn't like a per call thing where every time suck call is gone through, it like can't grab like 5 million again and again and again. It's more like when integration grabs like draws 100,000 DAI, the approval limit will go down and becomes like 4.9 million. More draws and it essentially like just goes down to zero. Governance, probably an executive vote takes another decision and then like increases that value again. So those are basically the two areas where like governance really has to make a decision, like set up the gate contract and then like give a certain like draw limit to allow like integration to access SUC. So we have for the developers, we have we have the implementation ready and we have like some docs. So if you go to like Deco protocol /DSSGate, you can look at the code base. What we've done is we've implemented like one design called like, just calling it like gate one simple gate. Implements a couple features like token approval, style, draw limit, and then implements a backup balance. And then when there are two balances, you need to decide priority, right? Like does the integration, like does the gate contract like access backup balance first or like the subcall first? So in a sense, like we've implemented one design called gate one, and you can see that. And then there is a little bit of documentation around like gate that you can read, like all the design decisions that went into, and then how it could be used. So two different things. As an integration, you can look at like gate one and then see like how it might fit your needs. And then you can also implement your own gate like with slightly modified design choices and basically like use that as well. So where Deco fits in, like Deco, as you know, like works with yield and interacts with the surplus buffer, like collects the origination fee from fixed rate walls and it passes it all to surplus buffer. And then in turn, like over time, based on the stability fee or the variation of the stability fee, it accesses the surplus buffer through SUC, and it makes sure that the fixed rate vault, the debt of a fixed rate vault stays at a fixed rate fixed number like over the duration, over the fixed term. So in that sense, like yeah, we will be discussing that probably like a couple weeks down the road. But yeah, overall, like I think SUC is like an interesting integration pathway too. I think folks should like think a little bit more about it. Anybody like looking to integrate with Maker protocol should think a little bit more about it. And DSSGate is like we hope like it'll be like a handy tool both for governance to move faster and in giving access to SUC to integrations, and as well as like yeah, basically unlock like new types of integrations.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that presentation, Vamsi.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
Happy to answer any questions too.
Yeah, exactly. If anyone has questions, feel free.
Yeah. I just want to highlight that if anyone is interested in this design pattern, that it's based on this sandbox research project that Vamsi talked about from SES, and there's some information here. But I think this is a very powerful design pattern, and it's really awesome to see it actually being used now, because it can also really help in terms of parallelization of work, because as Brian wrote in the chat, the issue with adding new modules to the Maker protocol today is that there's a very like binary authorization system. So if we grant something authorization on the VAT, it basically has full authorization on all the functions, and there's no limitations to what it can do. Obviously, it's limited by the code that's written, but then we need to really extensively review and audit that code. So if we really want a lot of external contributions, then the sandbox pattern is very powerful, because we can limit the integration surface to the specific functions that integrators would need, and we can impose like certain limits, like Vamsi was talking about here, like you can put in a 5 million limit for SUC. And that's something that we actually, today, we're actually talking about this. I was presenting on this exact thing in our team. that in CES we'll probably look into how can we also do some of this for collateral onboarding, because when you're onboarding new collateral types, you're also messing with a lot of parts of the Maker protocol that external teams can't do, because yeah, when you're building a spell, you have root access to all parameters. There's no limits to what harm you can do. When you're building a new join adapter, you are getting authorization on the VAD as well. So there's a lot of things where we can really make a really neat sort of integration surface that can also improve the overall security of the Maker protocol, and also increase or decrease the time to market, rather, because we don't need to necessarily verify every single line of code. At least we can minimize the attack vector. So that's the whole point of this design pattern. So yeah, if anyone is interested in knowing more about this, yeah, please reach out.
Then to answer like Frank's question, one investment per gate, I think, or one integration per gate, I think that's the right way to do things. It's although there's nothing like stopping from 10 integrations to access the same gate, but it's like, I think the right way to deal with this is like deploy one for an integration, and then like operate that, like top up the approval limits or like a backup balance, or maybe you don't even need a backup balance. So just take those decisions like based on an integration.
Hey, Vamsi, how do the repayments work on this, or do you just envision this as like a one-way suck?
Repayment, yeah, it's like the suck itself is like one way, and then if the integration has to repay, they could just like transfer the DAI back to like pause proxy. For the backup balance, you can essentially implement a withdraw condition, right? And like governance could load it up with 100,000 DAI and then say like we'll withdraw it only after like the end of this quarter. So before the end of the quarter, the backup balance cannot move. It can only be accessed by the integration. The governance can't like take it back. But after the end of the quarter, like governance can now like withdraw that DAI back. So that's why it's like backup balance. You don't really use it as the primary one. First suck, yeah, one way, and if the integration has to give it back, like I don't know, maybe they just push it through.
Handle up that on their end.
Yeah. The other thing that we really tried to do is not add any requirements on the integration, like that they would have to implement like any of these limit checks or any of that. So for them, we basically replicated the suck interface, the same function interface in GAT. So Gate would exactly look like WAT to them. They wouldn't really have to do like anything else like inside the integration itself to handle this. So yeah.
I had a question about kind of how this relates to the DSS Vest contract. So if we were to upgrade the DSS Vest to include a DSS gate, because my understanding is that DSS Vest draws directly from the surplus buffer through suck, right? So I'm just trying to think through this practically. So basically it would create like a middle step, and instead of sucking directly from the surplus buffer, it would suck from the gate contract.
Yeah.
And the gate contract would just hold that balance in the interim and consistently kind of re-up that balance over time as it gets depleted. Is that the right way of thinking about it?
Maybe not, because the goal is not to like gate like every single like suck call. The goal is about like usually stuff like join adapters, DSS Vest. These are contracts that can be like audited like once, and you can be like completely sure that the suck calls like coming from these contracts like will not do like anything shady or anything like that's like high risk. So if you can create a contract that's already risk limited, and then once you create a Vest, right, it's all about like just redeploying the same thing again and again and again to handle like different payments. So there's really like no need for a gate contract to step in again. I don't think like a gate would really benefit being between like VAT and like something like DSS Vest, or probably even a join adapter. Like although like yeah, join adapters don't really use suck, but in that sense, like small like well-tested contracts can obviously like continue to use like VAT.suck directly. This is more about like, let's say an integration like Deco, right? It's like this large body of like this is like probably a large protocol that's like completely new. That's from the maker protocol perspective, it's like not sufficiently well tested, but like there's an opportunity like to get it going like quickly, parallel development, like deploying it fast, like testing it, all that. So far, like the thing is like DSS West like contract like can be like audited, right? But it's just that how do we get like these large surface area like new smart contracts from accessing like VAT.suck without really like I guess like in a much more like faster fashion. So the like Gate would be helpful because Gate would be like this one thing that's like well tested, well audited. The actual protocol like Deco could be audited like maybe like down the road, but this it's almost like a chicken and egg, right? Like you won't be confident about Deco without like you're testing it and without like giving Deco access to VAT.suck. But then you can't do that because like giving untested protocol like access to it is scary.
Yeah. So like restated, basically for simple contracts that do suck calls like that are pretty low risk, like you don't need to do a DSS gate because it's additional gas, like it's just unnecessary. But DSS gate enables you to integrate with way more complex external modules without worrying about whether those modules are like 1000% foolproof, right? So you can basically limit your risk while obviously also doing the due diligence of auditing like that, whatever that mechanism is. But at a minimum, like you can basically limit the risk. Yeah, okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, I mean, think of it like Maker goes to a hackathon and gives everybody like a $25,000 balance to like implement their project with. And we can literally just give out, you know, like 10 different projects access to this $25,000 balance. And we know that they basically, there's a guarantee that they can't like mess with the system's accounting or break anything. We don't have to do a full audit. And then the idea is like some of those are going to prove themselves out as being like pretty cool. And then we increase their balances. And eventually like we you know, if they actually like find product market fit or whatever, we can find maybe a more gas efficient implementation. But this allows for a lot more experimentation. Yeah, the other thing is the paradigm I was thinking of this as is like the Maker protocol is kind of like an operating system terminology. It's like kernel space, right? And we add a bunch of modules to the kernel whenever we're adding things. But what we need is like a system call interface into the kernel that limits the amount of damage that that user space can do to the kernel. So DSSGate is basically like the beginning of that that sort of like restricted interface into kernel space. I don't know if that analogy works for anybody. But.
Yeah.
Following along those lines, do we eventually see that the quiet?
Your mic is very muffled.
A little quiet there, Chris. Oh, yes.
We've totally lost Chris's mic.
I don't know. Does that change anything?
No, it still sounds like your microphone is like under a pillow being suffocated.
Okay, I'll type it.
Sudo gate me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually
a
slide that demonstrates what you're talking about, Chris, that I just put in the chat with the kernel space and user space. But yeah.
Famsi, before you reply, just can you restate it for the recording, because there's no written stuff in the recording.
So the question is like, is the plan to like eventually remove Gate and give like, let's say the integration is like super well tested, has been around for a couple of years, and is the plan to eventually remove Gate and give it direct access to like VAT.suck? I've thought about it, but I think like having Gate would still help because of the backup balance feature. So direct access to suck means like that direct access just disappears, right? Can disappear. Like Maker governance has to do is like VAT.deny the integration address, and then like boom, it's gone. So integration that can be like really abrupt for integrations. It's kind of like, I mean, we've thought about that in a way for Deco, right? Like what if like that happens and then we have a like Deco protocol has a bunch of obligations, right? I don't know, for the next like 3 months, like maybe not new issuances, but then like that would be that would be like a mess. So in that sense, Gate can still be like a long-term piece of that puzzle. So this ability for maker governance to do like hit .deny at any time, like can be mitigated by governance locking up a backup balance, like, and putting a stamp on it saying like, yeah, we're locking up like 1 million and we can't take it out like until like the end of this quarter. So like no matter like what we do, you have access to 1 million. So in that sense, like Gate can still be like a long-term piece for integrations that demand that additional trustlessness from the maker protocol side. So in a way, it's like, yeah, it's limiting risk not just like for maker, but it's actually like limiting risk for the integration too, like risks coming from maker like to the integration. Yes.
So this makes me think about kind of like, how do we manage the overhead costs of the protocol in the event of something like a Black Thursday where surplus buffer goes negative and we have to mint MKR to like raise DAI. Like I think there were ideas about kind of taking out funds from the surplus buffer and holding them in separate pools to ensure like continuity of operations. And I know some core units also have like my core unit has a operational continuity sort of wallet for like 3 or 6 months of operations. I'm curious, like, if DSSGate can be used as like a limiter, like basically you still retain like the liquidity for whatever the 20 million or 30 million in overhead, and you just keep that and it doesn't get removed from the surplus buffer. But yeah, so I'm just thinking about also like how we can improve our safeguarding, like operational continuity in the event of massive losses, while also like not relying on totally like diluting MKR to fund operations after the fact. Yeah, that's just something that's on my mind. It kind of fits into this discussion.
Yeah, that's like a whole big rabbit hole.
Yeah, don't feel obligated to answer. I just wanted to share that thought.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, beyond like well thought on.
But you could upgrade it to not use the Gate contract. That's one of the reasons why the interfaces are kept the same. So yeah, from a technical point of view, you could, but I'm not sure we would ever want an external protocol having directly access to SOC. I don't know, maybe.
D3M is, sorry, D3M is a ilk generator, right? Like not a SOC generator.
Yeah. So that entire class of like ilk is, it's all like deposit like collateral and then like your access limit. So the debt ceiling acts as almost like a natural limiter, natural like risk limiter, but that sort of thing does not exist for VAT.SOC. But that's really fun. That the question is, other protocol access to VAT seems like a recipe for a bad time. But I think it's like, I think there is something to this like protocol controlled value meme, and especially like it's been an underexplored concept like from like I think like in at Maker. So it's yeah, if you can manage risk, like why not like try a couple experiments and see like see what happens.
Yeah, and another thing I want to point out is the concept of quantifiable risk, which is, you know, we saw that Compound had that weird governance bug, and they were actually kind of saved by the fact that the contract that was emptied had, you know, they could only siphon comp from like a specific smart contract, and it wasn't like a mint function. And that's kind of an example of a sandboxed setup, because there was a limit to how bad it could go. It was a really high limit, so it was pretty bad. But that's essentially the same concept here, that when we're implementing new modules and DeFi is moving fast and we can't formally verify everything and audit everything necessarily. I mean, we could, but we probably wouldn't innovate fast enough. But here we can quantifiably risk manage new modules, such that even if in the worst case we can say we would lose 5 million and not cause emergency shutdown, for example. It doesn't mean that security goes out the window, but just in general, being able to quantify risk is really helpful. And if we're to authorize external modules on the VAT today, it's really hard to quantify risk, because there is unrestricted access to do many bad things.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we could get through and audit it, but it's like severely underestimates the amount of time it takes to like safely audit something. Like we saw this with sort of Centrifuge, right? They had a whole liquidation module design, and when we finally started cracking it open, we were like, oh my god, it's going to take us like however many man hours, like months of time to like really fully grok this code. And so then it just made more sense to like limit it with the RWA sort of sandboxing. So it's the same thing. It's just, we're going to get a lot more integrations, be able to set like lower debt ceilings if we have these like more restricted modules. I'll add, just so people know, this isn't as easy to do with collaterals that have liquidations turned on, because the liquidations can kind of violate the debt ceiling constraint, right? So like there's a debt ceiling, and then you think, oh, they can't exceed the debt ceiling, but if you have liquidations, you actually get a chance to like remove that debt ceiling. And so the sort of first order collateral types of liquidations actually aren't as like easy to constrain in this way, but there's a whole range of integrations that don't require like liquidations or can manage their own or whatever. And if they go through this one interface, then we can guarantee that the constraints hold, and we can do all kinds of integrations safely.
Yeah, I think we're actually looking into the cumulative debt ceiling thing in CES. I'm not sure it solves all the problems, but it could solve that edge case you're talking about, where you just keep maxing the debt ceiling and to take out more DAI, even though it's being liquidated.
All right, so we're approaching half past. We still got a few 8 minutes left. So are there any sort of final questions anybody or comments anybody wants to ask or make about DSSGate or about David's presentation before we wrap up for the day? I guess we're starting the day from our US folks, but cool. Any shout outs anybody wants to do for meetings upcoming, anything like that?
Yeah, I'll shout out the calendars that we have. So we have a votes and important dates calendar that you could subscribe to. It's a public calendar. It's maintained, and it includes all of the important MIP cycle dates, as well as the various votes that happen. Both like governance polls and executive votes, I believe, are on there. And then we have a second calendar for calls. So these include public calls like this one, as well as semi-public calls like stakeholder alignment meetings. So we've begun listing them in public, and they are not public per se. You can't just come in, but you can request. So if you are a stakeholder and you see an initiative that is relevant to you, you are welcome to request access. And so, yeah, subscribe to those two calendars. They are very helpful. And so, yes, that's my shout out. I'll post the links in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you, David. So I know we've had a bit of a presentation heavy meeting this week. So we'll try and get a little bit more discussion in next week. We also wanted to try getting some light sort of topics for these calls from the recognized delegates instead of just from the core units. So if you're a recognized delegate and you have a topic you want to bring up in the next meeting, please reach out to me or to David.
And preferably reach out before the end of the day Tuesday, because that is when we pretty much try to decide on the Thursday segments.
All right. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. And I will talk to you all next week at the latest. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.